And the role of this global cult of secret societies is to manipulate global events to generate low vibrational energetic responses from humans. So
Yes.
look at the First World War, look at the Second World War, look at economic depressions, economic deprivation. Look at what's happened in Gaza since October the 7th. Look at what's happening in Iran now. These are enormous producers of low vibrational energy.
Hello, everyone. A warm greeting to all our friends. It's an honor for me to have David Icke with us on our podcast today. Thank you, David, and good evening. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
My pleasure too, mate.
I have with me Elizabeth Asoro, my precious collaborator, who at the end of our conversation would like to ask you one question as well.
Okay.
Even though you are very well known worldwide, I think it could be useful to do a brief introduction for the very few who don't know you and your work.
Okay. I was born in a place called Leicester in the East Midlands of England, and was born on a what we call a working class housing estate, council house estate in Britain. And I had this desire from quite an early age to be a professional footballer, which was quite an ambition, given that most people don't become footballers, even though they want to be. But somehow I managed to become one. And then my career finished at 21 with rheumatoid arthritis. And I went into journalism, and I worked on newspapers and radio. And then I joined BBC, first of all regional and then national news. News to start with, but then I went into full-time sport. I also became a national spokesman for the British Green Party, which gave me a real insight, which I didn't like, into politics, which put me off for life. And then towards the end of the 1980s, some very strange things started happening to me. First of all, whenever I was in a room alone, it seemed like I wasn't alone. It was like there was a presence there. And I went on like this for a year. And the presence got more and more tangible, almost touchable, until the spring, the March of 1990, when I'd been working for the BBC in London, and I went back to my hotel room and I sat on the side of the bed, and I was on my own, and the presence was so tangible. I spoke out in the room and said, "Look, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you're driving me up the wall." A few days later, I'm in a newsagent shop with my son, who's a little boy then, big strapping bloke now, and I suddenly felt the atmosphere change. What I would say now was that a change in the electromagnetic field. I also felt like magnets were pulling my feet to the floor, and I heard not a voice, but a very strong thought form, which said, "Go and look at the books on the far side." So I'm standing there in total bewilderment. What the heck is going on? I walked across the shop to the books, and I knew what the books were. They were romantic novels that the bookshop or the newsagent sold for the tourists who used to sit on the beach reading them and stuff. But so I was bewildered about the books for a start as I walked across, and then I saw in the middle of the romantic novels this woman's face on a book called Mind to Mind. And I was attracted to it because it was different to the rest. And I turned it over, and it said the word psychic this was a book by a professional psychic. It was a biography. So immediately, my reaction was, I wonder if this lady would pick up what's been going on around me for the last year. So I bought the book, I read it in 24 hours, and I arranged to go and see her. And I saw her 4 times in the spring of 1990. First 2 times I went, because what I told her was that I had arthritis and maybe a hands-on healing would help me. I said nothing at all about what I'd been experiencing for a year. Nothing. Only my family knew about it anyway. So I went a couple of times, and we had a nice chat. And then the 3rd time I went, I felt at one point like a spider's web was on my face, very, very tangible. And I immediately I thought, this is what she said in her book, that when other dimensions of reality are trying to lock into you, you feel like a spider's web on your face sometimes. And it was like, it's like an electromagnetic field, exactly that. And so I said nothing to her. I'm sitting on this medical type bench in her front room. And I said nothing to her. But a few seconds later, she throws her head back and says, my God, this is powerful. I've got to close my eyes for this one. Remember, at this time, I'm a television presenter. I'm presenting the sport for the BBC. And this lady then proceeded to tell me that she was seeing a figure in her mind, and the figure was asking her to tell me what they were communicating. And sitting there that day, I was told that I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. And what? From that moment, I would be led to knowledge, and knowledge would also be put directly into my mind. And I would think, where did that come from? And many other things too, all of which have come true. So from that moment, it started. And I went on this journey. I left the BBC. The BBC left me, actually. They didn't renew my contract, which was very surprising because, I got many commendations for my work, and I was only, young at the time. But what that did was free me to go wherever this was taking me. And it did take me to people, books, personal experiences, documents, endless different sources of different information. But it was like someone was handing me pieces in a jigsaw puzzle, pretty much in the order that you can start to understand where they go. So it started off where I was basically deluged with information that there was a global network of secret societies that were basically running and dictating the direction of the world, and that they were the real power in the world, not the presidents and the prime ministers and the here today, gone tomorrow politicians. And it went on from there as I went deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole into the non-human dimension of what I call global cult of secret societies. What it's actually serving was another dimensional force that wasn't human. It went on from there as I went deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole, and the information was driving me there, to the fact that we live in a fake reality, a simulated reality that's been created by this other dimensional force to entrap human perception and human self-identity and put us in a myopia of awareness, both of the reality we're experiencing and of the nature of who we really are, which is not human. It's consciousness. It's a state of consciousness which is ultimately all consciousness, and we are an expression of that. And it's been quite a journey over the last 36 years, to say the least. And of course, as you will know, Mauro, when you say things that are outside the box, then people who are still inside the box think you're crazy, and or think you're dangerous, or both. And so I've experienced enormous levels of ridicule, enormous levels of abuse over the last 36 years. But, I'm not interested in a round of applause and a statue. Thank you very much. I'm interested in what the hell's going on so we can do something about it. And what has happened is that the more events in the world have unfolded, the more they've confirmed that what I was saying, crazy as it may seem at the time, is actually confirming what I said.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
of course. But I think your work is characterized by a broad and fascinating vision that has been far ahead of your time, allowing us to open a window onto a reality, a truth that may be unsettling yet necessary to understand our world. And so, David, thank you for quoting my book, Gods of the Bible, in your book, The Road Map, which focuses on the idea that we are all living in a simulation. And about this, I have some questions. May I start with the first?
Go. Yep.
Of course, I read your latest book with great interest. And on page 12, you write, the scale of the illusion can be seen with the fact that the brain doesn't exist as a physical entity either. For many people, this is quite a challenging idea.
Yeah.
Could you kindly explain to our audience how do you interpret the role of the brain in the simulation, given that it belongs to the illusion?
Well, it's an illusion in the sense of how we see it, how we experience it as a physical entity, because there is no physical. What it is, however, is a field, a very complex field in its own way, of information. If you look at a computer, it's processing information. What I found very compelling is the way that the technological world that's so fast unfolded in my lifetime, your lifetime, from the computerization, the artificial intelligence, the digital level of it, and all the rest of it, how that mirrors technologically the way that we interact with reality and the way we create the reality that we think is real. So I don't have Wi-Fi in this place, but if I did, there would be a Wi-Fi field in the room, which anyone in the world could tap into with a computer. And the information in the Wi-Fi field is just encoded information in the electromagnetic field. But what the computer does is it locks into that field of information, and it decodes it into what we see on the screen. What we see on the screen is that same information in the field, in the Wi-Fi field, that's in a completely different form when we see it on the screen. It's transformed. So when I started looking at mainstream science in how we create reality, it's the same principle. It's basically the same. This matrix, this simulation, is a field or fields of information. And so we need a computer to decode that information into a completely different form, which is the world we think we're living in. And that computer is this, the human body. I've been calling it, and the human brain, of course, massively. So I've been calling the human body a biological computer since the 1990s, because I'm saying that's what it is. And when I then look at mainstream science and how we create reality, the reality we think we're in, it's obviously computer-like, because you have the five senses. The five senses are that which directly interact with this information field, cosmic Wi-Fi, if you like. And the senses, they all work basically the same, turn that frequency information in the field into electrical information. They send it to the brain, and the brain has different areas that specialize in decoding the different senses. And together, the brain puts together what is actually a holographic reality, which is precisely the same principle as the computer decoding Wi-Fi and putting it on the screen in a totally different form. That's what the brain is doing, but it's operating electrically and electromagnetically itself, because there is no physical. There's only the holographic illusion of physical. So if we look at what I'm saying, I'm saying that actually there is no external world either. That what we experience, I'll grant you, it seems like that, is an external world, is actually all going on in here. And the brain is a processor of information. It's not the seat of consciousness, that's something else. It's a processor of information. It's a processor of information, for instance, coming from the cosmic Wi-Fi field, the matrix, and it's also has the potential, if we awaken to consciousness, to process what consciousness is dictating to. And the difference between someone who is simply decoding the matrix and the whole body program, as I call it, is running the show, and someone who has opened their mind to consciousness. So consciousness is coming in and influencing that perception, that dynamic. That's what we call awakening. People are awakening. When they say I'm awakening and they suddenly see the world in a different way, they're awakening from the body program. Because what I'm saying is that this, what I call biological computer, is a program. It's a software program, and it obviously, when people say, well, that's fantastic, that's kind of ridiculous. What do you mean? It's a body. Well, when's the last time people remember breathing? They remember breathing the last time they were out of breath. What's the last time they remember digesting food? And all the fantastic processes that the body is delivering second by second in response to heat or cold or environment in its various ways. And what I'm saying is that this body computer also includes psychological programs, perceptual programs. And you can look, for instance, at the reptilian brain, as scientists call it, the R complex in the back of the brain here, where the probe went in the Matrix movies to take them into the Matrix. We get psychological, big time psychological responses and reactions from that that reptilian brain alone. Fight or flight comes from the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain is constantly scanning the environment, looking for threats to survival, not just physical survival, not just the obvious survivals, but survival of relationships, survival of your job, survival to pay the rent at the end of the month. All these the things come from the reptilian brain. Road rage comes from the reptilian brain. So it's not just that the body is a biological computer that's constantly processing information, and that's what it's doing. It's processing information. When you go into a room and it's very cold, that information, which is a frequency, is processed by the body, and it compensates for the cold as best it can, or it compensates for the heat. All the time, the body is processing information because it's a software program, and it's also a psychological, perceptual program. Now, if you go through your life only responding to the perceptual program running through the biological computer, then it's running you. You are pretty much biological AI. But if you open your mind and you let consciousness in, the true I, the true self, that the manipulators want to exclude in the interests of control, then you can override this program, and that's what we call awakening. And it's the understanding that really makes sense of the world is that this matrix was created by an other dimensional force, and this global cult within human society that I talk about is serving the interests of that other dimensional force. And what are those interests? Those interests are that this other dimensional force is feeding off human energy. When the Morpheus character in the Matrix movie held up the battery and said the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world built to turn humans into one of these or into this, that was a profound truth. What I've picked up over the years from different sources, because you're always putting adding bits, and then you see the picture emerging, is that this other dimensional force is feeding off human energy, but a particular type. This other dimensional force, consciousness, is actually an extraordinarily inverted, schismatic, chaotic state of consciousness, state of awareness. It's very low vibrational in the way that it operates and the what it vibrates on in terms of frequency. Okay. And therefore, if it's going to absorb energy from humans, then it has to be within a band of frequency that it can absorb. Again, mainstream science. Every time we think and every time we have an emotional reaction, we are generating energy. We're generating a frequency. This is what people call vibes. I got good vibes from him. I got bad vibes from them. You're feeling the frequency. You can't see it because it's outside of this narrow band of frequency called visible light, which is all we can actually see. But you can feel it. You get the vibes off people. And it's these vibes that this other dimensional force is absorbing as a nutrient, as power, if you like. And so it's not interested in anything that's high vibrational because it can't absorb that. It's got to be low vibrational. And it so happens that this energy that this force can absorb relates to human emotions around the base emotion of fear, anxiety, depression, resentment, regret, hatred, conflict, war. All these things generate low vibrational energy. Humans give it off like a battery or like a power source. And so the dynamic is you've got this other dimensional force which feeds off low vibrational human energy. And the role of this global cult of secret societies is to manipulate global events to generate low vibrational energetic responses from humans. So look at the First World War, look at the Second World War, look at economic depressions, economic deprivation. Look at what's happened in Gaza since October the 7th. Look at what's happening in Iran now. These are enormous producers of low vibrational energy. And what it means is that this cult serving this other dimensional force has no interest whatsoever in a world of love, of joy, of peace, of harmony, because that's not the frequency that this other dimensional source can absorb. And so if you look through what we call human history, first of all, the few have always controlled the many. Why is that? And the other thing is it's a whole history of events that generate low vibrational human response in terms of emotion and thought. And because this is a place where we're basically vampired, energetically vampired. And it makes so much sense of the world suddenly.
This is a very interesting perspective, and it's very, very clear, David. Now I have a second question for you. You affirm that religions share a common origin, and I agree totally with you. Could you expand a little on this point, and in what sense do religions lead back to the same source?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. And I've always questioned religion all my life. I've never gone with religion, but when I was writing the roadmap, where I quoted you, of course, it really, really hit me because of the 28 chapters in the roadmap. I think 5 are about religion in its various forms. It really hit me just how fundamental religious belief is to human control. And what I'm saying is that, if you look at the level that humans are operating on, you see loads of different religions and you see loads of different political ideologies. You see orthodox science, which I say is just another religion, because it's structured in the same way, it operates in the same way. And it seems to be like this mass of different competing religious, political, scientific beliefs. But if you go into this other dimensional level and the inner core of this cult within human society, then all these religions and political parties, whatever you want to call them, and orthodox science, they all fuse into the same hands, if you like. This is very, very, very important to human control, because if you look at the mathematics alone, it should be impossible for this through history sequence to constantly recur where the few control the many. We're told there's 8 billion plus people in the world, but the number of people in full knowledge who are driving the direction of the world to greater and greater dystopia. AI human fusion dystopia is what they want. The number doing that is a tiny fraction by comparison to the 8 billion. So mathematically, it should not be possible. So then you look at, okay, so why is it happening then? And you see that there's a structure in place that works like this. You are the few, and you're faced with a vast number of people. If those people were in unity, if they were working together, and they knew of your existence and what you were doing, then it would be over overnight. The house of cards, because that's what it is, would come down. So first of all, you have to hide you and what you're doing. You have to hide the source from which it's all coming from. So you lead the population to believe that presidents and prime ministers and governments are running the world. Then you look at the population in general and you think, well, if they're unified, then we've got no chance. So how do we break them up? Number one, you get them to believe rigidly and without question in a belief of some kind. Overwhelmingly, it's a religious belief. It's extraordinary, the numbers, when you think that there's 8 billion people in the world, we're told, and 5.4 billion of them are said to identify either as Christian, as Muslim, or as Hindu, never mind all the others. So you get people to believe rigidly in some kind of belief. Now, overwhelmingly, it's a religious belief, whichever religion it is, but also science is a religion in the sense that it has a rigid belief that repels all borders until the evidence is so overwhelming it can't do it anymore. That's the story of science. Well, science in the modern world anyway. And you have the political beliefs, your left, your right, your center, whatever. I've said so many times, this manipulative force couldn't care less what you believe, so long as you believe it rigidly and without question. So you've got, and what you must have to do this is you must have many different beliefs that people believe rigidly. Because then, first of all, your belief becomes like a prison. It becomes like a prison cell for your mind, because you will not go outside the walls of your belief into those areas of potential insight, possibility, knowing, awareness, discovery. You won't go there if it's outside of your belief system. You won't go there. So if you're in a religion, then if you go there beyond the walls of the religion, you're said to be dabbling in the occult. It's the devil. And if you are a follower of orthodox science, then you have your rigid belief system as well. And anything beyond it, you are a pseudoscientist or dabbling in the paranormal. And so orthodox science and religion work exactly the same way. They have a belief system. You can't go beyond it. Otherwise, you're no longer part of the group belief system. Now, once you've got that, you're holding people's perception of reality in a prison cell. You have the perfect environment to divide and rule the target population and play them off against each other. So you play Christianity off against Islam. You play Christianity and Judaism off against Islam, which is what's going on in Iran now. And all the way through, what we call human history, or what appears to be human history, you have this dynamic of different belief systems being played off against each other. In the political arena, you have left played off against right, so that basically, if you're of the right, then the left is all bad because they're the enemy. And if you're on the left, then the right is all bad because they're the enemy. And you're seeing it now, not least in Islam's the enemy, and Christianity is the following the true God, and they're the people who are following the wrong God, and it's perfect for divide and rule. And so what you're doing is you are creating an environment in which the target population, which in unity would bring you down overnight if they knew you existed, you are playing them off and setting them at war with each other. And that's how a few can control the many. Because if people just stopped, whatever they call themselves, if they just stop, just stop, just a minute, stop, quiet. How is it that you're my enemy, but the strings attached to you and the strings attached to me are held by the same hand? How can that be? Well, how it can be is that's how the few control the many, and always have. The classic Illuminati global cult symbol of the pyramid and all-seeing eye, which is on the dollar bill, and it's on the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States. You see it so often. You look at that pyramid structure, that hierarchy, and at the top is the all-seeing eye, and the all-seeing eye is this other dimensional force, and it's running the pyramid. And this other dimensional force ultimately is a state of extreme psychopathic, chaotic, distorted, schismatic consciousness. And what it does is it controls the pyramid by infiltrating the awareness, consciousness of its players, of its assets, of those that are imposing its will. And therefore, as you come down from this other dimensional level into the global cult, you see people that are expressing exactly that state of consciousness in the human world. So, I mean, you look at things that I've been researching for decades, like the satanic ritual network, which underpins this cult, the pedophilia network, which interconnects with the Satanist network and underpins this cult. You look at the Epstein files and what's come out there. You look at Jimmy Savile, the BBC entertainer who was a procurer of children for the rich and famous, as well as being a mega pedophile. It's all come out in Britain. And he was extremely, extremely right at the heart of the British royal family, Jimmy Savile. This disc jockey, as he was, just played records on the BBC, and he's invited into the inner core of the British royal family, and he was allowed to do his mega pedophilia right up to his death in 2011, while being at the heart of the British royal family. I mean, it's an extraordinary story, but this is the mentality that is directing the direction of the world. So this consciousness, this fake God consciousness, is psychopathic. Well, psychopathic doesn't really cut it. I mean, it is super, super, super psychopathic. And if you look at the definitions of a psychopath, right up there are a deletion of empathy and a deletion of compassion. You have no empathy, you have no compassion. And I call empathy the fail-safe mechanism of human behavior. Because if you can put yourself in the feelings of that which you're affecting, those which you're affecting, then it will change the way you treat them. But if you have no empathy, you don't have the ability to have those feelings, and this consciousness doesn't, then there are no limits anymore. There are no limits to what you will do. There's no horror that you won't perform and be involved in. And that's what the inner core of this cult is like, and that's what this other dimensional force is like. And that's why the world is as it is. It wants people in all these low vibrational states.
Thank you. I agree with you totally on that, of course. Here is my third question. In your book, you refer to Christian Zionists.
Yeah.
This subject is still unfamiliar to many people, especially in Italy. So could you kindly explain what Christian Zionism is, its role today, and why it is so crucial to you and to your work?
Well, we're now entering your domain big time. You have a Bible that has an Old Testament and a New Testament. And because it is said to be the Word of God, somehow there has to be a acceptance that the Old Testament and the New Testament are the New Testament is an extension of the Old Testament, and it's the Word of God. And because it's the Word of God and God can't be wrong, then somehow you have to explain to yourself the massive contradictions. I'm not saying the Bible has nothing relevant to say. I think there's some great lines in it, but there's also some absolutely grotesque stuff in it, not least in the Old Testament. So you have the belief and the lifelong indoctrination into Jewish people that they are God's chosen people. Why? Because the Old Testament says so. And there's a covenant with God. I'm now seeing Roman Catholic spokespeople saying, no, that covenant was lost. God ended that covenant. The covenant now is with us. We're now the chosen people. It's like, why do you have to be chosen people? Why can't we all just get on? What are you doing? But the chosen people. Now, the point being that you had the creation of Israel, which I document in great detail in a number of my books. It's quite a story, and it relates to the Rothschilds massively. And so you have this tiny country in the Middle East called Israel. And that which runs Israel, which actually is pseudo-Jewish rather than Jewish, is extremely small in number, but is also at the government level and secret society level and Mossad level and military level. It's also the point of the spear, the point of the arrow in so many ways of this cult. So if you look at why the Rothschilds brought about modern Israel, well, you're looking at it, you're seeing it. You've seen it ever since 1948, in fact, before, in the way that the Palestinians were forced off their own land in their hundreds of thousands in terror at what was being done to them. And the Rothschilds put that country, Israel, based on the Old Testament, written by who knows when, in who knows what circumstances, because it was going to create mayhem in the Middle East. It was going to create this vortex of conflict. I mean, if you're talking about producing low vibrational emotional energy, I mean, well, Israel is the home of it, really, in terms of its actions and its effect on the world. However, if you then look at the number of Jewish people in the world, even, officially Jewish, according to Jewish sources, it's something like 17 million, 15, 17 million. Well, that's ridiculous. There's 8 billion people in the world. How can you have such an impact when you're only 17 million? So what's necessary is another vast number of people need to be pulled in to support the agenda, not of the 17 million, because many Jewish people oppose all this stuff, but the inner core of the 17 million that are driving this. Netanyahu's a classic. And so, because you have an Old Testament and a New Testament, and you believe, or you're told to believe, that you must take them as one unit, then the Christian belief system of the New Testament has to accept the Old Testament, because both are the word of God, apparently. And so Jewish people have a covenant not only with God, but with that land, the promised land. So suddenly what you've done is you've generated support from massive numbers of Christians, not least in America, for the agenda of this inner core of what runs Israel. And the ones that are most vehement in that are Christian Zionists. They're the Christians who believe not just in the New Testament, but the Old Testament, and that Israel is God's chosen people. And, you look at Ted Cruz, the American politician, who says that he supports Israel, right or wrong, because the Bible says that if you don't support Israel, then God will look very unkindly on you. This is the mentality of the Christian Zionists. And then what you find when you do the research is that Israeli sources, sources that go back to Israel, dominate the Christian Zionist Christian movement, just as organizations like AIPAC, a foreign entity that represents Israel in the United States, massively funds the great majority of American politicians, Democrat and Republican. So you now have the Christian Zionists in America supporting Israel's action in bombing Iran. They support Israel's action in bombing Lebanon. They supported their action in bombing Gaza because they are biblically programmed to believe that they must support Israel, right or wrong. And so it's basically numbers. If you look at the number of Christians in the world, it's massive, massive. And if you can gather a great number of them to support your agenda, it doesn't matter that you're only 17 million, you've got a great wave of support for what you are seeking to do. This is why Benjamin Netanyahu is also always quoting the Bible, quoting the vicious, bloodthirsty Yahweh of the Bible when he's talking about bombing people. I mean, it's extraordinary. And, this whole thing, we talk about religion, this whole thing of the Bible treated as an historical document. Now, here and there will be historical events that it will connect with. But, I mean, where's the evidence that any of this stuff ever happened, and not least the Old Testament stuff? But once you are believing in the Bible story, the Bible suddenly becomes an historical document rather than something to add to the mix of possibility. Becomes an historical document, and therefore, if you don't believe what's in the Bible, then you're dismissed by Christians. You're dismissed by Jewish people because you've gone outside of what they believe, and it's something that is so fundamental to human control. I mean, I'm looking all the time now, especially with the Iran war going on, at the literal biblical endorsement of what's happening in Iran on the basis of, this is in the Bible. And, it's like I mentioned, you've got the Jewish perspective that they're God's chosen people. You've got more and more of these Roman Catholic spokespeople saying, no, that covenant with God was ended. Now it's the people that believe in Christianity that are now the chosen people. They are arguing over the interpretation of the Bible as if the Bible is a historical document that must be obeyed whatever. And you can see the kind of the mess and I've described human society a long time ago as like putting 50 balls of wool in a very little room, putting 50 kittens in there, shutting the door, coming back 2 hours later, and someone saying, "Oh, sort that lot out." It's unbelievable the interacting nonsense that drives human perception and leads to human control.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense, of course. My last question is this. At this point, is an unavoidable question. Do you think that it is actually possible for human beings to step outside or even to escape what you describe as the simulation, and how might that process begin?
Well, yes. In the end, it's all about frequency, because this simulation, this matrix, is a band of frequency. Actually, it's a multidimensional band of frequency, which is where this other controlling force is basically manipulating from. And if you are yourself within that band of frequency, the matrix, you're in the matrix and you're of the matrix. And therefore, all your information from which you're forming your perceptions is coming from the matrix. And if that situation continues, then how is anyone going to break out of it? Because all the information they're receiving is giving them a perception and a self-identity that is completely fake and is designed to keep you in a low vibrational state, not least because they feed off that, but also because it keeps you in the matrix. It keeps you in the vibrational walls of the matrix. When we have a perception, not least a self-identity, but a perception of reality that is myopic, that self-identifies, for instance, with being someone on the checkout in the supermarket. That's all I am. I just work on the checkout. I've got no power. Or no, I just drive a bus. That's all I do. I'm a bus driver. That's all I am. That self-identity energetically, in terms of the perceptual energy that state of self-identity creates, mirrors your self-identity in this way. If you see yourself as little me, I've got no power, I'm either subject to some judgmental God, or I'm subject to authority in some form, and I've got no power, and they tell me what to think because I'm not very bright. They're obviously very bright. They're an academic. They're a scientist. They must know what they're talking about. If you're in that state of being, then you are accessing a tiny fraction of your infinite self. Tiny fraction. In fact, probably very tiny bit of it at most. But if you go through a process of complete transformation of your self-identity from I am little me, I have no power, I'm just a human, or I am subject to some judgmental God and I have to do what I'm told and please him. If you go from that, which will access a fraction of your infinite self, you go to I am all that is, has been, and ever can be, having a brief human experience, and I am an expression of infinity, infinite consciousness. And ultimately, if I awaken enough, I am that, I become that infinite consciousness. Then as your self-identity expands from little me to infinite me, not as a concept, but as a being that you live, suddenly your energetic field expands. And as it expands, its frequency gets faster and faster and faster and faster, to the point where it leaves the matrix. You might still be in the matrix physically with the biological computer, but you are now tapping in to that infinity beyond the walls, the vibrational walls of the matrix. Suddenly, you're now in the matrix, but you're not of the matrix, because you're seeing everything not from the perspective of the matrix, but from the perspective of infinite awareness beyond the matrix. And suddenly, everywhere looks completely different. It looks a completely different world. Suddenly, you can see how the manipulation works. You can see who's doing it. You can see how we're being perceptually manipulated to be suppressed and subordinate. You can see it all, which you couldn't see before. And this is why so many people have said to me over the years, honestly, mate, it's so obvious. I can see it now. Why couldn't I see it before? Because you were there before. Now you're there. Now you can see it, because you're tapping into that level of awareness, of insight, of knowing that is beyond the walls of the matrix. And that's what they don't want us to do. That's why they're always suppressing us. They're telling us that we're just a human, or at best we are subordinate to a judgmental God. I just want to say something about that in a second. And they're looking now for the ultimate control system that stops you doing that, and that's AI human fusion. They want to fuse AI with the human brain. They're openly talking about it now. And they're talking about, the period of 2030 for it to be happening, because they want to replace the human mind with artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence becomes the human mind, at which point it will never go through these thought processes and emotional processes of, who am I? What is this place? Who's running the world? To what end? Those thoughts will obviously not manifest with an AI that this manipulative force controls. And so that's the end game, if you like, to stop this happening. But consciousness can overcome anything so long as it's in its power and in its pomp and not suppressed and separated from the human entity, which is what the whole deal is all about. And I would just say this on religion as well. One of the people who has talked about this this force feeding off human energy, low vibrational energy, is a man called Robert Monroe. He's left us now, but he was a radio executive, a very successful one, it seems. And suddenly he spontaneously started to find himself being projected, his consciousness being projected into this astral dimension where these entities are. And he worked at it. He wrote a number of books about it, of what he experienced and how you can do it. And the American military got very interested in this, and they did a study called the Gateway Study. The Gateway was a name that he gave to the process that he taught people, Robert Monroe, which was basically something he called hemisync, which was synchronization of both hemispheres of the brain, allows you to go into the project your consciousness into the astral. So they got together, this US military psychological department, a number of people who could astrally project, and they did this study. And Monroe was the person who gave the name Loosh to this low vibrational energy, which he said he learned in the astral dimension these entities were feeding off. And funnily enough, when they did this Gateway study, the US military, they found that their participants were coming across in the astral dimension so many reptilian entities that they gave them the collective name in the study of the alligators. Oh, so-and-so's seen another alligator. And what I've been saying over the years is that this is where these non-human entities basically operate from. They operate in our reality as well, but overwhelmingly they're in this astral dimension. Now, this thing about Loosh, when you look at the way it plays out, the kind of Loosh that they low vibrational energy that they absorb takes the form, yes, of fear and all those other low vibrational emotions I've talked about, but it also takes the form of worship. And funnily enough, the reptilian brain also relates to worship, the need to worship. And so this is what I concluded anyway. If you're in a religion, you have the concept of the devil or Satan or Shaitan in Islam and whatever, the Yod Baoth in the Gnostic belief system. And that is a low vibrational state absorbing your Loosh, if you like. But what if you have a religious concept of God, good, and the devil, bad, but actually in the worship of the perceived God, you are also feeding the beast? And what if the beast was in the guise of God and in the guise of the devil, Satan, whatever, and that actually it's the same entity, the same consciousness? And whether you are worshiping God, bowing and bending the knee, or you're opposing Satan or fear of Satan or whatever, you're feeding the same beast. It's just under a different guise. And what if you want to call it God, the real infinite entity, the real infinite consciousness that people can call God if they like, it doesn't matter, it's just a name, is actually outside the matrix. And what we've been manipulated to do is to fear the devil and worship God when it's the same consciousness, the matrix consciousness, the matrix creating consciousness, that we are giving our energy to either way. And I think that that's what's going on. So that's why I say religion is a foundation, the very, very foundation of human control.
That is a very, very important point. Now I'm passing the microphone to Elisabetta, if you like. She's a lifelong admirer of yours.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, Mauro, and thank you, David. Many friends of the channel would like to ask you about the Epstein files. You have already written a great deal in your latest book, and I would still like to ask you what you think is really behind their last release, and also about your view on the architects of this blackmail system. Thank you.
Yeah, well, the structure is very interesting because it means right the way through the system, basically, people are kept in the dark, even if they're quite well immersed in the system, they're kept in the dark of what's actually going on. I mean, I've met cabinet ministers in the British government from time to time, and they're absolutely bloody clueless. They have no idea what's happening because they're just here today, gone tomorrow people, and that's it. They're being run by the people who are always there, the so-called civil service and what have you. So the structure is like this. If you look at the world and you see a gigantic spider's web all around it, and in the center of the spider's web is the spider. Now that spider is in this other dimension. It's in this astral dimension. And it's driving events in this human realm, band of frequency, to generate maximum loosh. But so then in those strands of the web immediately around the spider, there you have the inner core of the global cult operating in our dimension and interacting with that other dimension. Not least through satanic rituals, etc. And they will be people in those strands in the web, and every strand is either a secret society, a semi-secret group, or a government agency, Silicon Valley, whatever. And so that immediately around the spider, the inner core of the global cult, they will know the big story. They will know what's going on. They'll know why. Maybe one or two things kept from them by that. And then you come out from that inner core where there are secret societies, but almost no one will have ever heard of them. In fact, many of them don't have names, makes them harder to track. And you come out from the spider, and now you're entering the realm of the secret societies we do know about. Of the Freemasons, Opus Dei, the inner core of the Jesuit order, the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, on and on and on it goes. There's so many of them. And they are fiercely compartmentalized. So that in the Freemasons, for instance, there's 33 degrees of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and the vast majority of Freemasons are on the bottom 3 levels of degree, so-called blue degrees. They will not know what the Freemason network is there to do. Only the few at the top will know that. So it's fiercely compartmentalized. I mean, you had the P2 lodge in Italy, which came to light towards the end of the 70s. And that was a fantastic example where they found that this guy, Licio Gelli, who was running it on behalf of a much wider global web, he broke up the P2 Freemasonry Lodge into sections, and each section had a person running that section. And each person running the section only knew the people in their section, in his section. The only people that knew everybody in all the sections was Licio Gelli and the immediate little entourage around him. And so you had people who were interacting with each other in politics, in military, in journalism, in corporate world, etc., who were all members of P2, but they didn't know because they were in different sections. This is how this compartmentalization works. So you then and what's happening is the agenda that's being driven by the spider, the other dimensional force, is coming out through the hidden, the secret society level. It's coming out and it's heading towards the mainstream society. And what you do in the end is you reach what I call the cusp of the web. And that's where the hidden part of the web meets the seen part of the web. And that's where this cusp is. And there you'll have the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations in America, the United Nations is part of that. You have the Club of Rome, which was created in 1968 to use environmental concerns to justify centralization of power. And also in this cusp, you have all these non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and think tanks. And the job of the cusp is to take the agenda coming out from the spider and to play it out into the mainstream society through governments and government agencies and corporations, etc., in the form of changes in society which drive the direction of the world to greater and greater dystopia. And so when you come out into the world of the scene, to the public, it seems to be just random organizations and random events, but actually it's very, very coordinated through the web. That's how the structure works. And you know, the thing is that once you start to realize that all these apparently random and disparate and unconnected governments, organizations, government agencies, and so on are actually connected at the web level, then the whole world suddenly makes sense about why they do certain things and how the whole thing plays out.
Thank you, David.
But real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Oh, it has been a real honor and a privilege, I would say, to speak with you. I'm sure we could continue this conversation for a very long time.
Yes.
And I know our audience would have many, many more questions to you as well. But for now, thank you very, very much for your time. And I truly hope to see you again.
Yes, that would be great. Yeah. Lovely to see you. Lovely to talk to you.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye, dear friends. Thank you all for being with us. Please stay tuned and see you again soon.